The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Emily Allen, and we appreciate you joining us for the International Town and Gown Association Census 2020 discussion. Before I get started, I'm just going to cover a couple of things, and then I'll actually turn it over to our census partner. But again, I'm the incoming president-elect for the International Town Gown Association, and I work at Colorado State University, go Rams, as the community relations specialist and liaison to the Board of Governors. ITGA wants to thank you all. We know that these are uncharted times, right? We don't know what's happening and we aren't sure what's going on. Although today we're talking about Census 2020, which may be a break from the COVID-19 conversation. So there you go. We know that there are probably more questions than answers today, but we have been receiving a lot of questions around Census 2020, and ITGA wants to serve our members. And we wanted to make sure that we show you we're in partnership with the Bureau and to have our partner specialists come on to answer any questions that you may have. And then we will actually be asking you all to email myself and Beth Bagwell with any continued questions. Please know that we are planning to host a webinar every 2 weeks regarding the census. So please mark your calendars. We are going to host another one on Monday, April 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, Monday, April 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Feel free to share the links. Beth Bagwell will send those out to a new meeting invite. Please also know that this is going to be recorded. So you will be able to share this recording with those who weren't able to join us today. Everyone is going to remain muted. So you all will need to ask your questions via the chat, which is a feature, I don't know where it is on your computer. On mine, it's to the right, but it says chat box, and we're actually going to try it out here today for you all. If you can go ahead and type in where you're calling in from, so the city, the county, the institution you're calling in from, and then how many people are joining you today for this webinar, that would be great. Again, if you entered into the chat section, we'll go ahead and we'll see who has joined us here this afternoon on the call. Oh, good. I see people already chatting. Please do not use the question button to submit your questions. Only use the chat area. That is where I'll be monitoring and waiting for questions. So before I turn it over to our census partner, please know that as Kathy's presenting to us, you can go ahead and put your questions in that chat area, and I'll prompt Kathy when questions arise. I wrote down a couple notes. I just want to make sure that I'm covering everything today. So again, please introduce yourself in that chat function, ask your questions there. Monday, April 6th at 12 noon Eastern Time, we will again host a follow-up to the census conversation. As we know, things are changing all the time. And now I am actually going to go turn it over to our Census Bureau partner, Kathy Hartz. Kathy, thank you so much for joining us today. You have had a very busy morning already, so we appreciate it. Kathy does not have the web camera, but I will go ahead and put up the website for you all to look at.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you to everybody that's joined the call. It is an interesting time right now. When we were talking to our education partners this time last month, we were actually dialing down meetings and preparing for operations to go live. Little could we have ever anticipated that we would be at this state. We are very appreciative of the trusted voices of the partners. We are depending even more than ever on relaying whatever information that we can to you to get to your constituents, to provide clarity and transparency. As Emily mentioned, I wish I had all the answers for you. I know that you're going to ask some questions, and I'm not going to have those answers yet, simply because the decisions have not been made. And so, but know that the Group Quarters Office, the Census Bureau, is working incredibly hard on all decisions related to census operations, but with a particular interest in higher education. It is a high priority for the director, the department, I think that, and this is only me personally because I am the account manager for academia, which includes higher education, libraries, and museums, but particularly focused on higher ed because the risk of having an undercount of students that are living in off-campus housing is of great concern. And so while we're here today to talk about group quarters operations that involve the students that live in on-campus housing, it's also going to be coupled by what type of messaging and how are we reaching out to the students that were living in off-campus housing that have to self-respond. So again, my thanks. I think that the most important place to begin is to, Emily has
Kathy, sorry.
Pardon me?
Kathy, I'm just gonna cut you off for 1 second because there seems to be an issue with the chat feature. So it seems like everybody's only able to put stuff in to the question section. So keep the questions coming. I know you all can't see that, but until Beth is working on how to figure out how to get the chat function up and running. But until then, I am monitoring where you all type in questions. So feel free to ask your questions in the question section while we figure out the chat function. Okay, sorry about that, Kathy. Go for it.
No problem. So on Emily's screen, on the screen right now, it's the statement that was released in March 15th, and it was about what we are doing. That was last Sunday, I believe, to modify some census operations. I would like to take you down to the one that pertains to college students, which is pretty close to the top. Emily, you'll see that there's a bolded statement saying we are adjusting operations to make sure college students counts, and there's bullets in there. To give you an update of where we are right now, let me start with two things that are probably the most minor issues, and then we'll get into the ones that are what I'm anticipating are of most importance to you. Know that during our group quarters advance visit, administrators or whoever the point of contact was for the university, whoever they designated to make the choice for the university on how they wanted to respond, almost half selected the e-response method. And then 7% chose paper-based questionnaires. And of course, there were a variety of ways of that we were going to ensure that those questionnaires be dropped off at the universities, or they could have us actually come and do an enumeration, which leads to the whole problem now of what is that group going to do, because they either cannot respond through e-records because they don't have the completed questionnaires, all the questions in their records. And so what are we going to do? That they have paper questionnaires being delivered, they have no students on their campus. So with the people that have chosen the 47% that have chosen the e-response, the census is leaning heavily now in on, obviously, contacting universities that were designated, that made the initial selection for paper, asking them if there's any way that they can choose the e-response method. And what some of the questions that I'm hearing so far is, we would love to be able to do that. However, Census is saying if we don't have all 10 questions answered for every single student, that they will not accept the file. And that if we could just send 7 of the questions, 5 of the questions, at least we would get the count. But we simply don't have the answers. That is one of the questions that I do not have an answer for. Right now, I'm still hearing that if it's not 10, that they have to select another option. I know that I've heard some things about them entertaining perhaps what questions that if it's not 10, could it be any lower? Of course, we would love to have all 10 answered, because this is our only opportunity once every 10 years to get a snapshot of the country for the information that we need so that we can analyze the data, look at the trends. But we are in unprecedented times. And so information on that will be coming if there's going to be a change of can we submit e-records if we don't have all 10 questions. The second thing that I want, pardon me?
Kathy, we do have a couple questions here. I just want to get back up to it. So a participant was asking how they don't understand how some of the schools were doing e-response when FERPA says that it can't be. And my understanding of that, I'll just answer that as a university employee, is that many are pulling from public information. So some of that is public. However, going to what you just talked about, Kathy, about not then being able to answer those 10 questions. So I think that people are kind of in limbo there.
Yeah.
Another question coming in, Tina asked, could you clarify if students are counted where they live most of the year, as in campus, or where they live on April 1st, since most of our students have left campus?
The messaging that to address the question of where should they self-respond if they are students living in off-campus housing and now displaced because of the COVID and the shutdown of the college campuses. The messaging is that we are encouraging people, and in fact, we are expecting people that lived in off-campus housing that are now displaced to still, when they self-respond, that they need to respond from their university or college address. It is where they lived most of the time this year, and on April 1, they are now not living there because they had to go back home, but in their self-response, if they go back home, it needs what we're struggling with is getting the message to those students that you are not to be included in the questionnaire response from the housing unit that you're living in now. So if they go home, not to be included in that one, to self-respond on your own using your campus address. And we have been working with education partners from the Big Six, the student-led organizations such as Students Learn, Student Votes, Young Invincibles, Campus Compact, several other organizations, and that messaging has been pushed across the nation for students through a variety of ways because email is not the most effective. And so through a lot of different apps that are instant, we have our partners that have been sending this message to their students that have been living off campus.
Great, thank you. So again, someone sharing that we were told we were only allowed to send directory information, so we would only be able to answer a couple of those data fields. That's more just a point for you, Kathy, around our FERPA concerns. Gabriel did share a link for you, Tina. I posted it to everyone in case you can't see the individual questions. So another question, Kathy, if students do not have their mail with the code, how can they respond?
All right, so two questions. Let me go back to the FERPA reference quickly. Know that Census has been working with the attorneys at university. I don't know what the overarching group is, but we are in compliance. They've been working for the past 3 years to make sure that we are in compliance with FERPA. And so we are, and that should eliminate any concerns of people providing information that they feel is FERPA compliant, but the Bureau is not in sync with. Secondly, students do not need to have, nobody in the country needs to have the code that is on the questionnaire. This is the first census that we're having what's called non-ID processing. When you go through the online questionnaire, it will say, do you have a code? You simply click no. And what happens is that in the back with our algorithms, we will match that housing unit to the ID code and match it up and remove it from our workload. So you no longer have to have a code. If you happen to have it, that's great. But if not, our algorithms will take care of it on the back end.
Wonderful, thank you. Do you want me to keep going with questions, Kathy, or do you want to present? I think we cut you off mid-thought.
Why don't I just do, if you could just continue to capture the questions, the only risk is that we get to be too much, so just correct me or stop me at any point.
Sounds good, keep going.
Okay, so right now where's GQ? Where after GQ Advanced Contact, what are they doing now? So right now, they are in part reaching out to the contacts that were established by or identified by the universities, but a faster way to get a response is to send an email to the GQ office. And this is particularly not so much for the people that said that they were going to respond via or do the e-response, because nothing's really changed for them. They will continue. They've already gotten their code. They've already gotten the forms, and they have the process of how to download those records. It's just the folks that, well, I don't want to say just, because everybody's, all the questions are welcome, but focusing on those that chose the paper operation, or those that cannot answer all the questions. And I'm really hoping we have a response or an answer quickly to this, and that could they just respond by only answering 7 or 8. So focusing on that, the questions, I hate to ask people just to hit pause, that just know that we are working on this, and it's changing. More things, more decisions are being made daily, and we will have much more information on this next week. And I'm sorry that I just can't answer the question of what are we going to do right now, because that's the major piece of that they're working on. What do we do with students that are living in on-campus housing that we were going to either deliver the paper questionnaires to, or have you come out and do an enumeration? So I greatly appreciate your patience on that question. If I could move, Emily, to the operational, the delays that we've had right now, and that what we are, if you could move down to, so we've had a 2-week delay on everything. This is posted now. I want to bring your attention to the group quarters enumeration. Now, understand that it covers a lot of other things other than higher ed. It also includes nursing homes, which we're going to respond via e-record as well from the majority of the responses we received, persons experiencing homelessness, but to focus on higher education, the operations are now delayed until April 16th. But having said that, we are going to have more specifics on the date, because the e-responses, they weren't going to start until May. And so there is time, but and I know that at this point where everybody's very worried about the online campus enumeration that falls under group quarters, that we would like to be able to provide the answers immediately. They just simply aren't there yet. So we do have time. They're now not beginning until April 16th, but again, that's all group quarters enumeration. And when it comes to college students, that even begins a little bit later for those that are going to do e-response. So we still have, not that we're going to take advantage of a couple of weeks, as soon as a decision can be reached, we will post when that date is going to begin. But right now, what they're doing for group quarters is getting in touch with all of the university contacts and discussing what is the other way that they can respond. Now, as far as the students that are living in off-campus housing, we have begun pushing messaging, and did when this started to appear. When the first college campus closed, we were talking with the administrators and the contact we have there. Messaging has been pushed to students. It continues to be pushed to students to make sure that they already know that they had to self-respond. We're at a disadvantage now because college campuses across the nation, they were going to hold kickoff events. They were going to be having things in their student union halls, census ambassadors going around to classrooms. So now, since we don't have the benefit of that in pushing the messaging to students living in the university, that we are now trying to reach them through all different types of means. Universities are creating their own videos. We have videos. There's another one that was just posted just 2 days ago, specifically involving students that are living on campus and how we're going to address those. I'll put that message in the box. It's only a 3-minute video. That's being pushed. As much messaging that we can from the census standpoint, and also the students that are involved in these organizations, the student-led organizations, are coming up with amazingly creative ways to reach the members that are the students that are in their college campus. And so at this point, that is our, until other decisions are made, we are just asking people to respond from the university address. We are, surprisingly, we're thrilled right now with the response from the online response, and also the telephone. If people are not comfortable in responding via on the internet, they can absolutely call one of the call centers and have their enumeration taken over the phone. So based on the data that we had and the metrics that were established, we are at the point of where we expected responses to be. We haven't taken a hit, and in fact, they're a little bit over that, probably because of all of this. We are expecting at one point, though, for that to start to hit a decline, and that's what we're anticipating. But until then, we're just, again, leaning in on, for colleges, on an e-response, and also just the messaging for those that are in off-campus housing, making sure that they are counted correctly.
Thanks, Kathy. I want to just chime in real quick because I know we had people join us a little later. You are joining the International Town and Gown Association Census 2020 discussion. We have Kathy Hartz here from the Census Bureau answering questions. You can use the question area to type in questions. I'm monitoring that to ask Kathy some questions at the end, so feel free to use that function. And we will be following up again on April 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time for another webinar with Kathy. So Kathy, I'll turn it back to you, but thank you all for joining us.
And I just want to mention that we joined this webinar. It was put together pretty quickly to just answer any immediate questions, even if the answer is that we don't have it yet. So I apologize for not having, a slide deck that's a little bit more comprehensive, other than just a timeline and the modification that was put out in the press release last Sunday by the Bureau. But we will be joining regular webinars. We will have the most up-to-date information, and anytime, as I said, the information is being posted on a regular basis as soon as the decision is made. People know the importance of higher ed and are concerned about this community, and so even before the 2 weeks, the next time we meet, we will be posting any type of new decisions to the link, and I will provide that to you as well. So a way to check if anything is happening in between the 2 weeks from when we meet again, you will be able to go to the website, specifically looking at group quarters, to see if anything has been announced. And also I'll relay that information to Emily so that she can distribute to the ITGA members. So Emily, I can't see some of the questions.
No worries, I've been keeping track of where we left off.
Okay, why don't we go back to what some people are asking?
Yep, so Gloria asked, I have heard that individuals who respond are able to not answer all 10 questions when they respond. Is this the truth? If it is true, why can't universities also opt to answer some of the questions for students in an e-response?
Gloria, I wish you were in the meetings that I was in, because that is my exact question. And in all transparency, it has been my question since day one. If you are living, and I'll tell you, I don't know what the number is. Nobody knows what the number is, because in some schools of thought, when we get to census operations, and again, this is outside of the GQ realm. This is people, the students in this situation, living in off-campus housing, that are going to respond just as anybody else would. What is that number? We accept questionnaires that are incomplete. So what does that mean? Does that mean if we have 2 or 3 or 5 of the questions, at some point a questionnaire will be rejected? I don't know what the number is, and of course they're not going to advertise that because people may just want to fill in the absolutely necessary information. And again, our goal is to get, it's the only time that we do have to get this snapshot of this data. But why can't that be applied to college students that are now in this setting, that if they're 5 or they have 6 or even 4, at least we get a count. At least we get a count. We know, we could possibly know what the gender is. We could know where they're responding from, and that will not then impact the funding. The funding will not be reduced because we have a count of that one person. So these are the questions that Before, we were told that for e-response, no, if we don't have all 10 questions, it's going to be rejected. And I'm hoping at this point they are making different considerations for that. Know that if you are just not a student living in on-campus housing or anybody covered under group quarters, that all it does is it increases your chance. If you have only 7 of those questions answered, it increases the chance to get a phone call from somebody at the Census Bureau saying, could we go back and address this? Let me be totally transparent. Do we have the workforce to follow up on every questionnaire that is submitted that is missing the answer to 1 question or 2 questions? Absolutely not. So if it is only half completed or maybe, not at all, you'll be getting a non-response follow-up visit or phone call. But we're looking into this. It's something that we struggle with as well in trying to offer explanations that make sense. This one does not. So hopefully this is one of the decisions that they are considering, and over the next 2 weeks we'll have an outcome. We'll give you the decision based on that exact question that you've been asking.
Just so you know, Kathy, Gloria greatly appreciated your honest answer and is laughing about it. So thank you, Gloria.
So look,
we appreciate the honesty.
If the Bureau has come out with, and this is my 4th decennial, and I've never seen a decennial where people have been so transparent, especially, the first thing that we faced was the stuff about the citizenship question. And we're a non-political organization, so I've heard all sides of that. We keep our politics at the door. We don't have time for that inside. We're only interested in the information that's gathered so that we can look at the statistics. But at that point, I think that when we were facing that, it was understood by all the census execs that if we don't go out transparent and honest, we are losing the battle. And there's no reason for us not to be. So while it may not be the most appropriate or the questions that are answered, my responses may not be the most diplomatic sometimes. It's where we are. It is the truth. And I think that if we cannot be truthful and totally transparent with our partners who are helping us so much, and really with anybody across the United States, especially with the situation that we are in, that we are not going to be successful in this effort. Having said that, the Bureau is still incredibly confident, and so am I. I don't know what this path is going to look like yet, but I am still confident that we are going to get a successful census and that people will be counted in the right places. It's just that we have a lot more work to do right now. So just thank you again for asking the questions, and thank you again for just helping us with this.
Thank you, Kathy. That was perfect. We really appreciate it. You have a question from Sherry. For off-campus students and just people in general, how do they get a census form if they are unable to self-respond via the internet? With the libraries and the plan kiosks now shut down, so they don't have internet, they need paper-based forms.
Okay, so let me make sure that I understand the question. If they do not have internet connectivity, how can they respond?
You got it.
Okay. So and then the next webinar I do is with the American Library Association in about an hour. So we have been in communications with them. They have a real-time map of what libraries are still open, and there are quite a few of them open because libraries, they are critical in providing support for social programs for the citizens that are in most need, such as persons experiencing homelessness. They know they go to their libraries for assistance with stuff outside of census and just that are federal programs. So they are, while some have shut down, probably more will be shutting down, they are doing everything that they can to remain open because they have a lot of people. 25% of households living in the United States do not have an internet or a computer connected to that has internet connectivity. That's staggering to me. And so they go to their local libraries. And they go to their community centers, which are now the community centers are closed. So what do? We have published the name, and people are pushing out, published the telephone number. People are pushing that out in messaging that people can call, and they can get a person on the line. And the questionnaires, the people that are on the line can respond, can select a link for any of the 13 languages. If they go to some of the other 59, they will actually get a person on the phone that speaks in that language. So they can respond via telephone. And then they can also request a paper questionnaire to be sent to their new address, wherever they're living. But then the question comes up for the other communities, those that are experiencing homelessness, that they don't have access to a telephone, or they don't have a regular mailing address. What do we do there? And those are two covered under what's called a service-based enumeration, and that's when we go out and we do a count of persons experiencing homelessness and specialized groups. So with every question, it can always lead to more questions. And so again, we just try to answer them as fully as we can, and just continue to work on until other decisions are made. So people to go back, there's a long answer to the question. If they have a telephone, they can call the telephone number and ask that a questionnaire be sent to them if they choose to respond by paper because they're limited with, they're in the digital divide or whatever other circumstance that they cannot respond via the internet.
Thanks, Kathy. I think that leads to maybe a couple more questions from myself. So when you send us the information, if you could share the telephone number, I'm sure we can obviously find it online as well, but if you share that. And then, of course, how do we get that telephone number out there? So I think communities are going to have to be creative with that. So, Geo shared in Illinois, they're in a shelter in place, so nothing's open, right? Libraries are closed and everything. So there are some communities that cannot provide that internet access in a public way. You have a question from Doreen, and I'm going to try to summarize it. Can universities send the census, basically the identifiable information, so the stuff in the public directory, to kind of get that number stuff for the census, but then on the back end, the FERPA protected information, can that be compiled data? So that would then give the census more of that, gender information, race, that stuff, but it's in a compiled format. That way it's not attached to an individual.
And so those are questions that are being asked and being worked through right now as we speak. I don't know what the end response is going, or the final answer is going to be, but right now every option is being explored, and that's one that I have heard of. And it all goes back to just information that we're collecting from one particular housing unit that you pull back, and it brings us information, statistics on, that from the a larger level, from a regional level, from a state level. So again, looking at patterns and trends once we get through this response operations and we start looking at migration patterns and everything that we look at for when we look at this data. So are there going to be new and different ways that we can start receiving data? I would expect absolutely. Are they there yet? Have we made the decision yet? No. Will it be coming soon? Yes, it will, which is why I think it's important that we do have these webinars every 2 weeks so that we can provide you the most up-to-date information, because right now, between the decisions that have to be made operationally and also just in reaching out to all the people, just the group quarters alone, to talk about the new options. It's to say they're overwhelmed is probably an understatement, but they are working through it, and we just need a little bit more time. If there's any good to any of this, we still have time before those operations were going to begin, and we were going to start collecting the data. And so we're using that very wisely, and we'll get you the information as quickly as we possibly can.
There is a community that is doing, or maybe a campus, so it's Sue. You asked, we are doing e-response and haven't received the form.
You're doing
sure what that means.
Okay, so for Sue, when I give you the address for the GQ office, it's my understanding that when a university designated the point of contact, that they were sent the login information, they had a specialized account, and there were step-by-step instructions on the process and the forms that were and how you submit those when it's time. And that time isn't until, last I heard, until May, but it could change. So I have concerns that there's a university that has not, either doesn't have the form, which then leads me to believe that perhaps they have not established a contact with the university, or that we just haven't, we've been remiss in sending them the links and telling them how to set up the account. So I would really be, I'm going to post that. I'd like some more information from Sue, like the name of the university. So, and I don't expect her to post that here, but if somehow I could get that and I could flag that question specifically for the GQ office so that they could look into that. So, Emily, if you could just help me connect with Sue to get that information from her, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. Let me see if we have other questions here. My computer has decided to be funky right now, which is so helpful, computer. I don't.
Well, I can talk just a minute or two about jobs. I don't know if anybody is collecting information on where we are with that. So we have made offers and reached out to 600,000 of the applicants out of the 2.8 million that we received, which was above our expectations. We have reached out, offers are being made, people are being processed. There will be some delays, obviously through fingerprinting. The hiring is going to be delayed, but other pieces of that can still be done because it's all electronic, and so that shouldn't be too much of a hit. And when we start operations for when they need them for non-response follow-up. Now, having said that, we are still keeping the website open for people to apply. We don't know. I mean, we don't know anymore about what's going to happen when offers are made. People decide that they don't want it. Obviously, the operations have been delayed. We're not going to be sending anybody out to do anything until we are absolutely comfortable that it is safe. We are working with states, New York, of course, California is another, that started seeing some of these, the immediate signs of COVID to figure out when is the best day to start operations on that. Of course, a lot of this is still just unknown based on how this virus is spreading. But the safety of the workers that we hire, along with the people that they are going and knocking at their doors, we are not jeopardizing any of the health there. So, and this is again focused mainly on non-response follow-up operations, which are not going to begin until, the end of May. And they can continue through August. People have asked, have we thought about extending the date? In the Constitution, it says that on December 31st, we will be delivering the counts to the President of the United States. We have not asked for an extension of that date. Again, from what I can see, and nobody's really officially said this, but I can see this moving in about 2-week increments, and that they are not making decisions based on the entire program that we have put in that we're going to be putting a request to extend that into 2021. Nothing of that is being done right now until we can just carefully monitor the situation, look at all the options, and then make decisions based on those findings. So that's where we are with jobs.
Perfect. So you have a question here around communities that are basically 50% of their residents are college students. So if there is a significant difference between the data collected in 2010 and then the 2020 data, will that trigger a recount for that community?
And that's a great question because, and that is also, all these that you're bringing up, I'm glad you're bringing up these questions, because then everybody, if you're thinking of it, so are a lot of other people, and then if they aren't, then all of a sudden you've just opened the door for some new information for them. So we have several offices. We have special enumerations. We do go out and we do conduct special enumerations for cities that have said, you know, we don't have a good count here. We know that it's under, and we would like to have another count done. Now, most of the time in the past, that's fully been done at that area's expense, which is quite costly. But what would that look like? Could we go out if we see the trends that we know? I mean, because the risk of students that are living in off-campus housing, not getting the message, and they are displaced now, and they go home, and their parents or grandma or family include them in the housing unit, counts them in that at that address, and it severely undercounts the college campuses. What are we going to do? Something's going to have to be done. Do we know what that is yet? No. Are they looking at the options? Absolutely. Will it be announced in time? Because everything is being prioritized based on operational begins and ends. Yes, it absolutely will. It's just a little bit too soon. Hopefully in 2 weeks, we'll be able to give you a little bit more information on questions that we just can't answer right now.
And just to repeat that question we're getting asked, for those communities that basically half of their residents are in fact college students, if then there would be a recount if there was a significant difference between the data that was collected in 2010 and then 2020. So still TBD.
Right.
Okay, another question that came in, it is around the census jobs. Are these census jobs open only to American citizens? Some of the international students who are stuck in the U.S. and who are employed in student jobs at the college are wondering if they could be hired for work with the Census Bureau.
So this is one of the questions that we were not advertising that international students would be used as enumerators in a census count. For the most part, the answer was no. But the answer is that we have large communities where we need students with multiple languages to apply for our jobs. That is being taken into account in the applications of the 600,000 that were accepted. I would, at this point, I would say please still have them apply, but knowing that we've reached the number of applications that we need, they did look at this through the lens of if people speak multiple languages, they were in high demand, whether they were international citizens or citizens, I guess. That's what we were saying in the beginning, that you needed to be a U.S. citizen, you had to have this certain age, you have to have background checked, etc. But allowances were being made in communities where we know we need multiple languages being spoke. We needed that in order to reach special communities. So it's not too late. By the time if they have some languages of people that we're still missing, I think they would absolutely get picked up. It would be looked at carefully. So I would still encourage them to apply, but just knowing that I don't want them to think that if I apply, I'm going to get a call in 2 weeks, because we've already reached the max that we need right now. But if they have certain languages that we're still looking for, their application will be looked at again.
Something shared by one of the participants is that international students can only work in the institution of study. They can be hired by the university, but not by off-campus entities. I'm not sure how that works. I guess with just their study benefits. Yeah,
I'm not sure. I mean, if somebody is applying for a job, whether they're a student or whether they're, I'm not sure. I appreciate that clarification. I don't know what type of documents they had to have, et cetera. I just know that we are hiring people that are living here now, that are, this is not their typical place to live long term, that are helping us with the census because of the language that they speak, and we needed somebody that does that.
Sure. And then they shared they have to have OPT. So I don't know what OPT stands for.
Okay.
But Leo, maybe let me know what OPT stands for.
Yeah, and that's the part that I don't know about, what documentation is necessary in order for them to secure one of the positions. But thank you for that information.
I just want to remind everybody there are, thank you, it is a work permit for international students. So if they have OPT, which is a work permit for international students, that is where they can then be helping. I just want to remind everybody to email any additional questions or specific questions around their community. You can email those to Beth Bagwell, the Executive Director for ITGA. Her email is on the website. You can also email me, and I will post that information, or we'll send it in our follow-up email. So if you email the both of us, we'll be helping get those questions in a more timely manner to Kathy and those at the census. Obviously, use your census partnership specialists that the institutions have. Please remember to reach out to them as well. And again, I want to remind people that we will be having a follow-up conversation. This webinar will be offered on Monday, April 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, Beth will be emailing out information for that. If people have further questions, I'm at the end of questions that I see people posting. I hope everybody can hear me. Someone's saying that they can't hear me. So hopefully I'm still being heard right now, but please remember to be reaching out with questions. We'd love to get them ahead of time. Oh, I am paused. Hold on a second. I'm going to share my camera again. Hopefully you can see me and hear me. But please make sure that if other people, Gloria can't hear me, but if someone else can say, maybe you can hear me, then I know that maybe it's Gloria and not the rest. People can still hear me. Yes, okay, Gloria, something on your end. So we would love to get questions ahead of time. That way we can work with Kathy, and Kathy can work with her partners at the census to prepare for our April 6th. Again, webinar April 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and we can prepare for that discussion as well. I don't see any other questions. Let me see, I just got a ton of feedback here. The answer seems like no. So are we postponing the big day of April 1st of a census?
Yes,
Kathy, I heard a different date.
Okay, so if you look at, would you mind getting the, you just need to refer to the new timeline of the operational adjustments that we've made. Field operations are for 2 weeks. Now know that April 1. It's a date that we select. There's nothing really significant other than us having press conferences and us having a start point for decennial operations. We've always selected that date. But as you can see, we opened the online instrument 2 weeks ago. The invitations to respond, they've already hit everybody's mailboxes. So April 1 is a date that we've selected, but it doesn't really, any operation that began on that day, I know the SBE, the service-based enumerations, the person's experiencing homelessness, operational, has been delayed for 2 weeks. So all operations have been delayed for 2 weeks. I would imagine that the Bureau is still going to go out with a press conference. There, of course, were things that were being planned across the nation and different communities on college campuses. It was, events saying, please, just continuing the message that you can still respond, paper, telephone, online. But with the cancellation of all of those, we will just be finding new and creative ways. But other than the Bureau going out with a press conference, I'm sure that we will come up with some other ways to push even more messaging out on that date, considering the limitations that we have on how much we can engage with the public, which is pretty much zero at this point.
Great. Any other questions before we close out today's webinar? Again, reminder, April 6th, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be following back up with the census. Email your questions to Beth and myself. Beth will send a follow-up email with all of these helpful links that Kathy has been talking about and others have been sharing. Kathy, we really, first of all of us at ITGA, all these members who are signed in today, just thank you. We completely agree with your philosophy in hearing something versus nothing. I think even today you were able to answer a lot of questions for people. You're getting a million thank yous from those online. So we really appreciate your willingness to hop on. For everybody listening, please know that Kathy has been on a webinar since 7 a.m. this morning. So she has been busy talking to the United States. So Kathy, really, we just can't thank you enough.
Well, and on our end, this is what we do. We are just incredibly thankful for the trusted voices. I'm getting goosebumps right now just saying that. We cannot emphasize that enough. That we cannot get to done, this was the messaging before COVID hit. But we are just so grateful for these opportunities. Please don't hesitate if you have, as it was mentioned, your partnership specialist. Our job right now is to just get on as many webinars and reach as many people as we possibly can, even if we don't have all the answers yet, because we know that it's going to help you with your constituents. And we thank you for sharing this passion. We will get there, but just the extra work that you're doing for us is just so appreciated. There aren't enough words. So thank you for the invitation. Thank you for your patience and also for your continued work in supporting this effort that is in our Constitution. So be well, and we're here if you need anything.
Thank you again to Kathy. Thank you to all of us who are joining us today. Please remember that this has been recorded and you are able to share this link out once it's done. Beth will send that out. But we appreciate everybody, all of our ITGA members. Membership is always open, so please join ITGA if you're just learning about this. But we know that it is extremely tough right now for everybody. And again, there are more questions than answers. ITGA is here to serve as the support system while we're navigating this unprecedented time. Again, Kathy, thank you so much, and thank you to all of our members for joining us here today. And at that, that's the conclusion of the webinar. Thank you. Thanks again, Kathy.